This is a love story, a tale of one couple and their unbreakable bond with 104 horses.
I must say, in all honesty, I mean, I would have given it up long ago. I can only say it's Pat's fortitude and absolute dedication to those animals. You know, he'd crossed the line, and when you've crossed it, you've got to follow it up. I would definitely say we might have saved the horses, but they've certainly saved us in the end.
Theirs is a story that weaves through 3 African countries, a life-changing journey that has brought them and their beloved animals to a new land they now call home. This is Mozambique. This is Inside Africa. Golden light and lush green vegetation swathed the landscape in Vilanculo, on the edge of Mozambique, as a herd of horses graze in the early morning sun. Although now blissfully blended into the land around them, their story, like the Retzlaffs, began elsewhere. It was in South Africa in 1976 when Pat and Mandy first met.
I met Pat when he was at university in Pietermaritzburg. They had a charity float in Maritzburg, and I was on the float, and we had a mutual friend called Charlie Bender. And apparently Pat and Charlie were walking down the road following the float, and then Pat looked at me and he said to Charlie, "That's the girl I'm going to marry."
Both had grown up in Africa, Mandy in Ghana and South Africa, and Pat in Tanzania and what was then known as Rhodesia. As a young married couple, they moved back to Rhodesia just before independence and the birth of Zimbabwe. There they farmed crops like tomatoes and raised their 3 children alongside a handful of much-loved horses.
My passion for horses, I think that probably started before I was born. It's in my genes, I think.
I didn't do much riding until I met Pat. So that's when my riding started again. But Pat's ridden all his life, and he comes from a long line of, you know, horse breeders, horse lovers.
But life for their family on the farm changed forever in August 2001.
Zimbabwe's president warns white landowners to leave their farms.
As part of then leader Robert Mugabe's land redistribution plan, many white Zimbabweans were pushed off their land, sometimes violently.
46 years, now we're running. There is some conflict, some fighting with the white farmers.
You really just didn't know what way it was going to go. And because, you know, so many sort of friends of ours had been killed, it was frightening, totally frightening.
While many farmers fled the country, seeking safety abroad, Pat and Mandy remained in Zimbabwe and took in the animals that were left behind.
The idea with the horses at the beginning was this is temporary. You know, all these horses are being slaughtered. Let's take some in so we can give them back when things get to normality, which it never, unfortunately, never did.
I just think Pat wanted to rescue them, really, and he'd think about what he was going to do with them afterwards. I kept on saying to Pat, "What are you going to do? What are we going to do with all these horses?"
Horses, you bond with horses, people bond with horses, and once that bond has become firm, it's very difficult just to discard the animal. The alternative was to put them all down. There was nothing else we could do.
As the land invasions progressed, the Retzlaffs found themselves caring for a team of over 300 horses.
We actually had 6 evictions. It got worse when we had more horses because obviously, you know, you had to think, of getting these animals out.
When they began to run out of grazing space for the animals, Pat and Mandy had to make a decision to remain in Zimbabwe or move elsewhere in search of a better life.
We didn't have any money coming in at that stage. We had to survive. We nearly had 300 horses, and we said, well, these horses have got to earn money for themselves, and that's when we had to make a plan of getting them somewhere. And obviously tourism was the thing at the time. Our possibilities were Tanzania and Botswana and Mozambique. And I just made a decision after 6 months or so of studying all these databases, which were all there, was to come into Mozambique. And that was because there was no competition here.
Penniless but optimistic, they took 104 of the youngest and fittest horses with them and rehomed the others. Having transported each of their horses safely across the border into Mozambique, Pat left Mandy temporarily with most of the herd to see if their life could begin fresh further down the coast.
Pat put 7 horses in a truck and he headed to Vilankulo, and he thought, Vilankulo has an international airport. I can do something along this beach, because we had thought about doing horse safaris along the beach in Mozambique, but it was a lot more difficult than anybody ever envisaged.
Little did they realize the farm animals so familiar to them were alien to the locals of Vilankulo.
Well, they'd never knew what horses were, so it was a mixture of fascination and fear. They saw the horses as big dogs with big teeth.
The women would have their baskets of fish, and we'd come along the beach, and the next minute the baskets were discarded and everybody had run into the bushes, and Pat and I realized that it was a problem.